But specifically during COVID, I was working at hospice. I was a grief counselor, and 3 of our 4 parents died. I'm talking about my husband's mom and dad and my dad all died during that COVID time. Not of COVID, but other things. And they had lived a nice, ripe age, but it was just a hard time. I was working remotely with hospice and counseling people who had lost loved ones. And there was a heaviness I haven't experienced before. So I reached out to a counselor, and it was actually her idea. She was like pushing me to, in order to get out of this heaviness and darkness, is to think of something that just really would give me life. It was just art. I love art. And we just thought it would be such a great, for one, distraction that would, keep some of this darkness out in a way. And so I took a class at Sawtooth Center here. We did all different things, but we did a lot of watercolor, which I like a lot, which is what I spent the most time doing to begin with. But we did collage, and there was just something about collage that I loved. And I don't know if it sounds crazy, but just being tactile, touching something, and the act of tearing. But what I like the best is, like, I'll look at an image that I'm trying to portray in this collage, say like it's a road. And I think, well, I'm not just going to put a road here in my collage, but what images portray movement, which to me would probably be lines going, in the same direction, or they could be opposite directions. But that's the part I am just gravitated to, is to the decision of what works where. And I can tell if it works. And the thing with collage is great. You can put on something and you'll go, no, that doesn't work. You can rip it off, or you can go over it. Yeah, I think art, in whatever shape or form, it can be what you want it to be, but it can represent beliefs and things that I think could have a message. Don't do just pictures. I like to sneak in little messages that come from my heart, that are usually ones of peace and acceptance, and the environment. Mm-hmm. I put words or phrases, references in with pictures that represent my voice. One of maybe the trademarks of what I'm doing is that it makes sense to me, and I hope it makes some sense to some people. Yeah. With like Hanging Rock and Pilot Mountain, I've got little things in that talk, little words about the environment, about save our world. Well, on the side of Hanging Rock, I have Save Our Planet. Yeah. I had it and it was actually in a magazine. I forget what it was. It wasn't a rock. So there's Art Crush that's put on by the Arts Council downtown on Trade Street once a month. And I went to one of the very first one of the Art Crushes, and it was Pride weekend here. And so I wanted to do because I love collage so much, I'm like, I want other people to enjoy it too. I think they would. Obviously not everybody, but I want people to give it a go. And so I decided to do a community art collage at Art Walk, and it's dark. It turns dark. It starts late in the afternoon, and so I started I'll have to send it to you. I didn't bring it. I started a flag with the different colors. I just kind of drew out the weavy lines of the pride flag, and started to label the colors that we needed on these. And then I started it out, and then I took it to Art Crush, and I was just amazed. And my husband was with me, and for one, we were amazed at how many people, they would see the collage, and I had signs, come, I had magazines, I had glue, don't need much for collage, and I said, add to it, speak. Let it be your voice. And it was on display at the public library for for a month. So that was fun because it represented lots of voices.
Yes, definitely.
You know, so I think I'd like to do more community art because I think it just happens that collage is something, you know, it's so simple in a way, you know, glue, magazines, pictures, some kind of board backing. But one thing I know I was going to say is that I didn't really start out as how can I create art in a, you know, environmentally friendly way. Didn't start out that way. So do not applaud me for my great, you know, it's just, it so happens that what I love and what I'm doing, there's a degree of laziness in it, that it was just something so easy to do that the process is, well, I can make the process as long as I want it to be. Maybe it represents me, but I didn't set out to do, you know, just like reusable, repurposed art. But it is what it is. Yeah. That is it. Yeah. My husband was pointing out to me, it's just to also appreciate from the sustainability point. He was saying part of environmental issues is a complicated process. Like, say, it's by just gathering your materials, it requires a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And energy means fuel or whatever in a lot of cases. So I love the fact that there's not much energy going on here except mine. You know, I do print them though, and that's using going to a local. I use a local printer who prints them. But I'm trying to be more purposeful and think about my packaging. I try to reuse things. I hoard, you know, pieces of cardboard more for like mailing something to somebody, and then like at the last couple of craft fairs, if someone bought my postcards, just putting them in these old the brown lunch bags that we all used at one time to go to school, and trying to be more thoughtful. I'm just so concerned about like my granddaughter Callie. I mean, I don't worry as much for myself, but what kind of world are we going to leave Callie?
Yeah.
What kind of world are we going to leave Callie? And I'd love and that's with my husband's environmental work. It's like getting to young people, because they're going to be the leaders of the next generation, and for them to hear messaging, understand messaging, somehow get it, you know, to reuse, repurpose. I just hope we'll leave a better world for our children and our children's children. And it starts with young ones. You know, and even if it's my little drop, it's just to say, try to do art with the things that are around you, that are in your home. I mean, I guess I would never before looked at art and even thought about it from the sustainability viewpoint, but now I will. I am, you know, and a lot of this comes from my husband and his passion. Yeah, it's very contagious. Well, for one, I worked at Summit School for a while, and over the 10 years I was there, they had the art class, traditional art classes, and they're amazing teachers, and very, very conscious of the materials they use. But while I was there was this little tiny room that was created called the tinkering space. And so in that were buttons and corks and wire and things you could, you know, find in people's trash, you know, all over the place. And then, you know, they would give kids a chance to come into that space and create. It was just a creating space. There was no right or wrong. Kids loved it. They loved going to the tinkering space. For one, they get, like, you know, when as a kid, you know, you're not told, I mean, there are some rules in the tinkering space. Let's not throw these things or whatever, but they could just create what they wanted to create. So since I've left Summit, you know, which has been about 5 years, you know, that little tinkering space is now this huge room. I don't know. I've been such a fan of tinkering at a young age, which I think evolves into multimedia. But for one, they can't tell us collage unless they get up to it. Which is one reason I don't know if you saw when you went by, I put a sign that says I tear paper for a living, and that's become a kind of like a catchphrase. And I was really excited because the last 2 craft fairs I went to, some people came up to me, oh, you're that person that tears paper. So that's been really great to have that label. So people, that's kind of a side issue, but to be known. But, I think when people look at a original, they'll go like, there's a lot of time in that. And there can be a lot of time in this. Now I can make a royal mess with all my magazines of glue and my husband. Especially in our tiny house, we have one table. It's not as long as this. Maybe when you pull the leaves out, this is what. So it's our eating table. It's our everything table. So my poor husband, a lot of times we'll eat out on our porch or something. But yeah, they would be probably very surprised that I only have one table to work on. But it works. We're okay with that. I can clean it up quickly. Yeah. But I think people don't realize how simple it is.
My art is repurposed steel, and the style is whatever my imagination comes up with and my clients. So, for example, I did a large cactus last year, and they said they wanted a cactus, use my own imagination. So I would go to the steel yard, and this is discarded steel, so no purpose, kind of death row out there for that steel. And I'll spend hours looking for pieces, and through, I guess, my imagination, I can pretty much start piecing sculptures together in my head, and then I just collect until I have enough pieces and to put it together.
Yeah.
So what I hope to do is, through my art, is to show people that just because something's discarded and not worth of any value to anybody, that it can become art and inspire not only myself to create, but also for others to see the art within themselves and see that beauty. So I am 64 now, and back in 1983, Flashdance came out. And Flashdance had Jennifer Beal in it, and she was a welder. And back then, I said I wanted to become a welder. So life took its course, and I never did weld. And I've gone from Florida to California to here, and never had a chance. So I finally, in 1960, when I was caregiving my mom, I needed an outlet. And that became my outlet. Was I looked at my bucket list, and on it was how to weld. And I thought, sounds perfect. So I wanted an all-women's welding class, and I researched for a year and couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So I ended up in October, going to Mixer, downtown Mixer, nonprofit. I love Mixer. And took intro class, like 2.5 hours, how to weld. And they had this rebar spider you put a pumpkin in for Halloween. And that's what kicked me off. I took the class. I was the only woman in the class. And honestly, it was all I could do to get in there to take the class, because I was very intimidated. Even at my age, I'm still intimidated by that. And went in, absolutely loved it. And when I left, I told them, I said, you've got to start teaching women. And I said, this was really difficult for me to come in. And there's a whole bunch of women out there that would love to weld.
Yeah.
And so since then, they now have women's welding on Wednesday night, and they have intro classes, all women classes. So, and they've asked me to come back and work with them for the women. So I usually do nature, and then I'll throw something whimsical in there, just for the humor of it. And I think it's because in my life, I've gone through so many ups and downs, and then I get stuck in a rut or something, and it can, something really little can just make me smile and make my heart smile. And that's what I love to pass on to people through the repurposed stuff. It's like for example, I use a lot of silverware, the ends of silverware, and even little children will come up and go, oh, that looks like a knife, or a spoon, and it is. I've repurposed that. And it's been fun for me to hear that from all ages. So it's been very interesting to me to, I've only done a couple shows. I've done Ardmore Walk twice, and then I did Whimsical Women last year, but they didn't have it this year. And I get, and it's usually from the men, the husband and wife come up, and the woman's all excited, and the male, and the male goes, well, who welded it? Thinking that some guy welded it in the back.
Yeah.
I said, I did. And they're like totally blown away that a woman welded stuff or plasma cut.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. Through the years, it's been a value in my life to repurpose, or like my clothes, I go to consignments.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many resources out. That's something I hope to pass on too. That you can take discarded steel, worth nothing or whatever, and then turn it into art. I also sew, and I do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anything I do, I try to repurpose, and that's just one of my values of who I am as a person and artist, I guess. So I guess my own values at heart, it just filters out. I honestly think if we keep going the way we're going, we're going to run out of, and it's just my way of doing my own part, what little part it is, to hopefully, especially with the younger community, bring that into focus. So, a lot of pieces that I get from the steel yard, I don't even know what they are. But my big pieces, and I'll send you a picture of it, have these rollers, conveyor type rollers, and they're concave in the middle, and they make the butterfly or dragonfly bodies when I'm welded together. And that commission piece, a butterfly, and it was like 6 feet by something, and the woman wanted, she had marbles from when she was a kid, the shooter marbles,
Yeah.
and I put them in as the eyes, and I thought that was really cool. It's a lot of work. I tell you one thing about repurposed work, it would be a lot easier for me to use new pieces of steel, because new pieces, they're not rusted, which I have to clean before I plasma cut or weld. Everything has to be clean, and if it's new, I don't have to do that. I do get envious of artists that do a lot of that, but then it doesn't fit in my values of upcycling stuff. So I think people, when they think, oh, you've just taken trash and you made it into art and blah, 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 it's a lot more work than what people, it's additional work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like it should be, but it actually is more work than buying something new and using and cutting it up and using it.
You kind of have to restore it to its original beauty before. Yeah. Do you often find that things have like misshapen at all, or is it more just like a rusty sort of thing?
It's misshapen, but to me that adds more character to my pieces. It's just like humans, and I think that is why it means so much to me. Is I've been there, I've been at the bottom, I've been at the top, but I've been every kind of up and down, in my life, and it's like art. To me, I've always loved the underdogs, and I think here I'm loving the underdogs deal, which is kind of weird, but any day I would take the extra work to have that extra imperfection in my piece that shows that it's had some life to it and created something new and fun.
We're the Art Shack. We're a nonprofit. We're creative reuse. And what we do is we take in gently used art supplies and materials and provide them back to the community at very affordable prices. And it has two missions. Our mission's to create an accessible community for people to have really affordable art materials, and then to also help the environment by taking things that would have gone to the landfill and diverting them from the landfill. And to date, we've done over 6,000 pounds. and we hope to grow. There's several things. One is that I was always driving over to Greensboro and Durham because I love those locations. So there's the Scrap Exchange in Durham and then Reconsider Goods in Greensboro. And I thought, why doesn't Winston, since we're the city of arts and innovation, and why don't we have something like this? And then I'm like, well, I could start this. And I was looking for, the pandemic had happened, and I was looking for something to get into. And so that's when the ideas started percolating. So I guess I could also contribute the pandemic to the idea coming forward. And I'm in school right now at UNCG for a master's in public administration, which is also helping me be able to move the ideas forward. So, yeah. I'm pretty tapped into the arts community because I was at Sawtooth. I worked at Sawtooth, and I'm also in an art gallery downtown. And then almost all the board are working artists. So I think that really helped, having those connections. And then I definitely remember our first donation. It was just down the street, actually, because there's this artist studio on Brookstown. And it was a woman who had taught in my department at Sawtooth, and she brought the first donation. And we used to use the studio before we had a space in Ardmore. We used to use the studio down here as a drop-off location. So it's a lot of artists working together to help one another. We have, well, the biggest hits are the paints and the canvases and the drawing utensils and the drawing paper. But we get all sorts of things that, like, we got miniatures in, like dollhouse miniatures, and people like to do installations with those. And then we've gotten donations from textile companies. So we got a huge fabric donation of a textile company that makes fabric for airplane seats. And I would actually like to do more of that, because I feel like when we grow, we could be a place where businesses don't have to throw out things that artists could reuse. Yeah. We also had, not used, but new IV tubing that would have been used in the hospital that got thrown out, but it was new, not used. And artists like to weave with that. So yeah, so there's ways that I really want to grow and help, like, businesses not throw things out. Yeah, that's on my list. Well, I think being a nonprofit allows me to try to stay on mission, that we want to make this a very accessible and affordable place for people, and so that it's not all about the bottom line. I mean, we have to think about that, so we have to be profit oriented, but I can also try to look for other funding sources to help, so that I can keep things really cheap for people and also do the work that we want to do. I think in May we'll have been in existence 2 years, so we're very new. Yes, that's actually on our list, and we've done some. We've had some free classes at the library, and we've done a few, but now that we have our own space, that's actually, we're going to meet in December and really start to put programming in place that it has a creative reuse programming ideas. Like almost all the board members are really good teachers, so but we're also looking for teachers. But one of the classes we did that was a really big hit was taking old clothing, like clothing you get at Goodwill, and repurposing and putting together to make new fashion. That was one of my favorites. And we also have made books out of old books and found interesting and made journals out of them. So I think it's really important, because I think art is incredibly important, and I think art is a healing force. And so it makes me feel really happy when I can create community around it that's accessible and affordable to people, because I don't think it should be out of reach to people. And it also makes me happy that that I'm helping the environment at the same time and using materials that would have been thrown away. So those two things, those are two very passionate things, and that it's come this far even has made me incredibly excited, and that the community has really supported it. So I think the parts that I definitely bring, and I have to say the board, because every board member has a different area that they specialize in, that we can all appreciate things that come in and understand why that somebody would like this. Like, like when the miniatures came in, my mother is a very whimsical, weird artist, and I knew she would love those.
There's always something.
Yeah. So, and other people can identify, like the tubing. I would never have known that the tubing would have. Yeah. But the people who are more into weaving, and they're like, oh no, this will be wonderful and used. And so I think in that way, all our different art interests work really well. Understanding when things are. What things are, because sometimes you don't know when they come in. What is this? Got a silver ball and it was a hip joint.
Oh no!
It was like a hip replacement joint, and they actually sold it. So
I'm not sure.
I know.
They put it in a sculpture.
Yeah, but I think the medical tubing, I hadn't realized that that was a thing. Yeah, people love that. So I just think mostly artists have a lot of things around, and artists who get older especially too, and they don't want to just take it to Goodwill, and so it's given them a place to bring things, including sometimes there are, like we had one woman bring paint. Her husband had been a very incredible oil painter, and these paintings that he created are when he had more dementia, and she didn't see a value of them, but I see a value. I think they're beautiful. So I think it gives a place for people to bring things like that, and that they feel that they'll be appreciated. Unlike if you just
do any like gallery sort of thing?
We do have. I mean, we're so tiny. You'll have to come see the
yeah.
space. We're so tiny. We do have the walls, and we did have some of those paintings up, and we sell those at a very affordable price too. But I thought they were beautiful. So it was a very interesting style. So, well, I think artists should always be on the. I think artists are commentators and philosophers, and they should always be in the front of a movement, and they can make the comments on the movement. I don't say every artist has to do this. It's just what I love, and a lot of the artists here love. But I mean, even if you're just reusing paint that was going to be thrown out, you are, creating creative reuse art because it was paint that you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think everybody has to do that. But I do think when you're being mindful of the environment, you're being a better artist because you're thinking about the world. And I think artists are supposed to think about the world and make comments but I don't think it has to be everybody. I was going to tell you too, we Salem College, we contributed materials. They are doing, I don't know if you know, but they've just done, and I need to go look at it too. They have hired an artist, and I cannot remember her name, and I'll try to send it to you.
Okay.
But she's done a completely creative reuse piece, and they reached out to the community and had the community donate items to create this piece. Okay. Let's see if I can find it. And we donated, Art Check donated towards it.
Okay, awesome.
And I was very excited about it. And I don't know if that's the one, but that's the way her art looks. So yeah. So I need to go by and see. We donated all these tins, these mint tins. So I'm hoping it'll be interesting. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I just hope that we continue to grow and that we become a real institution in Winston-Salem, and that we have a community where everybody feels welcome and that everybody feels that they can afford to create art. Because I do remember being in art school, and film was incredibly expensive, paints were incredibly expensive, and it was really a drain. But yeah, I just want it to be a place where people can feel that it's not out of their reach.